Hi everybody, today we are going to look at lesson 110, more on dividing decimal numbers. So yesterday we talked about dividing decimals, where when we write our problem, 0.6 divided by 5, we learned that we take the decimal straight up and then we ignore the decimal for the rest of the problem. Today we're going to talk about what you do when we have a number that isn't quite big enough or doesn't seem to work. So let's start with the problem as it shows. So 5 into 6 goes one time. 1 times 5 is 5. We subtract. And now normally we would bring down, but here I have nothing to bring down. So this would normally give me a remainder of 1/5. But there's something else that we can do. We can add a 0 here as a placeholder and turn 6/10 into 60/100, which is equivalent. Now if I bring down this 0, I can continue with 5 into 10 goes twice. 2 times 5 is 10. And now when I subtract, I get a 0. So the answer to 0.6 divided by 5 is 12/100. I know that this is reasonable because if I just take 60 divided by 5, I know that 60 divided by 5 is 12. So if I just add in the decimal and move it straight up, it's the same number. Okay, let's look at example 2. Okay, in example 2, this time we have 0.3 divided by 4. So I start by taking my decimal and I move it straight up into my answer, and now I ignore the decimal, and now I start with 4 into 3. Well, you're sitting there saying, Mrs. Pendry, 4 doesn't go into 3, and you're right. So what can I do? I can add a 0. And now 4 goes into 30 7 times. Make sure that this 7 is above the hundredths place, and we put a 0 in the tenths place as a placeholder. 7 times 4 is 28. We subtract. There we go. And now 4 doesn't go into 2, and that would normally say we have a remainder, but instead we're going to add another 0 as a placeholder. Bring down that 0. 4 goes into 25 times. 5 times 4 is 20. And now when I subtract, I have 0, and this 0 here tells me that I'm finished. So my answer then is 75/1000ths. All right? Okay, let's look at example 3. Okay, example 3. Here we have 3.4 divided by 10. Okay, I start by taking my decimal and I move it straight up, and then I ignore it for the rest of the problem. So I know that 10 doesn't go into 3, but 10 goes into 34 3 times. 3 times 10 is 30. I subtract, and now again, because this is not a 0, I'm going to extend this out, add a 0 to my dividend, bring down the 0, 10 goes into 40 4 times, 4 times 10 is 40, subtract, and now I have a 0. Okay, now there's also another way to look at 3.4 divided by 10. I know that when I take 34 and I multiply by 10, I get 340. It's like taking the decimal and moving it one place to the right and adding in a 0. When I divide by 10, I'm doing the same thing, 3.4, but now I'm going to move the decimal one place to the left. My number is going to get smaller, leaving me with 0.34. So this is the long way to solve this problem. This is the short way to solve this problem. Okay, and we'll look at this again in example 4. Okay, so for example 4, mentally divide 3.5 by 100. So whenever I multiply, I move the decimal to the right. Whenever I divide, I move the decimal to the left. And I move it to the left according to the number of zeros in my problem. So 3.5 divided by 100, I'm going to move 2 to the left. So here's 1, here's 2, and then I add in another 0. So it equals 0.035. I can confirm this by actually working it out. Okay? 3.5 divided by 100. Well, 100 doesn't go into 35. But it goes into 350 3 times. 3 times 100 is 300. I subtract. I add another 0. I bring down. 100 goes into 500 5 times. 5 times 100 is 500. I stick a 0 here in my tenths place as my placeholder, and my answers match. Okay? All right, let's look at example 5. Okay, two situations are described below in A and B. For which situation would you write the quotient as a decimal, and for which situation would you write the quotient as a mixed number? And then explain your reasons. So A, 4 friends earn $9.20 for recycling aluminum cans. If the money is divided equally, what amount will each friend receive? So, because I am dealing with money, this is inherently a decimal. So, for A, I'm going to write my answer as a decimal because we never write money in fractions. B, how many lengths of fabric, each 2 2/3 yards long, can be cut from a piece of fabric that is 12 5/16 yards long? This one we're going to write as a mixed number for 2 reasons. Number 1, our problem is given to us as a mixed number, so it's easiest to leave it a mixed number. And for second, whenever we're dealing with measurement, because especially in the standard system, our measurement isn't tenths, we leave things as fractions. Okay? All right, that's it. Lesson practice A through T tonight. Good luck, and I'll see you tomorrow.